Now Xiaomi, they just keep on pressing, don't they? They keep on pushing and giving us a very decent spec for the price point, especially when you take a look at the new Redmi K30 from them. So I have the 4G version, the 5G version, that's not out until January, and I don't have any 5G support anyway here in Spain, not where I live, so I'm not particularly bothered about that one. But my model's got 6GB of RAM, and the big selling point here is the screen's 120Hz refresh rate, which is unheard of. In fact, this is a first for a mid-tier phone, a phone priced so low, to have such a high refresh rate here. And you do notice it. You do see that MIUI now is very smooth, but it still has a couple of those typical Xiaomi corners that have been cut, which I'll be pointing out in this review. It's great to see that this time around that Xiaomi have included a 27-watt charger here. So we'll fully charge the K30 in just over 1 hour. We get a clear case just out of the box, not a bad case at all. It covers the buttons. There's a cutout for the fingerprint reader, which of course is on this side. You get a SIM tray tool and a few instruction leaflets. Onto our build now. So we've got Gorilla Glass on the front and on the back here, and this phone does have a very Huawei Mate 30 look to it to me, especially with the circular design in the glass, the pattern around the camera there. Now the camera, 64 megapixel Sony IMX686, the main sensor of course, and then we do have an 8 megapixel ultra wide. There's a 2 megapixel pointless macro camera, which takes very, of course, grainy looking, blocky, pixelized photos. And then we do have a 2 megapixel depth sensor for information for the blurred backgrounds and portrait shots, and a dual tone LED flash. So the frame does have these curved edges, so in hand it does feel really good. We just have the single downwards firing loudspeaker. There's no dual loudspeakers on this one, unfortunately. Type-C port, it's USB 2 spec, okay, so there's no video output from this. I did test it, but no surprises of course there. And a 3.5mm headphone jack, really clean output out of this. High quality, typical Xiaomi, and micro SD card support. So this SIM tray will take 2 nano SIMs or a micro SD and nano SIM. Unfortunately, it's not one of those ones that can house all three. Now the SIM tray itself does have metal reinforcing, so it's not likely to break on us. And there is even a gasket around it, as you can see, that red, which will help keep the dust and even maybe a little bit of water out, but there's no official IP rating, of course. So on the right we have the volume up and down buttons. They've got a good feel to them, and no, they do not rattle. And we've got a combination power on button / fingerprint reader. It actually works really well, very quick, just like the rear capacitive fingerprint readers. So up the top we've got an earpiece here, so we don't have a typical notch, but we've got the pill-shaped cutout hole punch, and yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. Now apparently in between they discovered that this is actually software, that's the black there, that there are ways to now have this enabled so you just get the white in the middle or whatever color's being displayed. So our thickness of this phone is 8.9mm, but with this camera, as you can see, that does protrude quite a bit. That brings it up to 11.1, so it's not the thinnest phone, nor is it the lightest. It's a rather heavy 210 grams, and you can see right here at the top, we do have an IR transmitter and secondary mic. So overall, the build quality of this phone is the norm for Xiaomi, which is excellent, the finish on this. I've got easy access to the buttons, and even though it is a larger phone, larger than the K20, and personally I think it's a little bit uglier, I would have preferred the pop-up camera again in that full screen experience without the pill-shaped cutout. However, it's not bad overall. Fingerprint and face unlocking is quick, so looking at it you can see that took about a second to unlock, and I will now hold the power button, which is always on fingerprint unlocking. It's a little slower, not the fastest I have seen, so some optimization is needed there from Xiaomi for the fingerprint unlocking. Brings me on to our display, which is probably the weakest point with this particular phone here because it's an IPS panel. Yeah, we do have the 120Hz, which is really nice. Personally, I would have preferred an AMOLED, even if it was just 60. I could live with that because it's not an amazing quality screen here. The gamma comes out to be about 2.0 out of the box with the standard calibration. That's actually all right. Closer to 2.2 would have been ideal here, but what we do have is a little bit of this bleeding, this darkness, the shadowing I like to call it, around the edges of the screen. This is more obvious and present just around the cutout here we have for that pill notch. You get quite a bit of it, really only on white images that you're going to see it. So the same image that you will be displaying, which is quite rare, but you'll see it often, for example, surfing the web with Chrome, and you will notice it, which may irritate some people. But let's face it, the average Joe, your auntie, is not going to be able to detect or see this, and they'll think it's an amazing display. Quite bad too on my unit down the bottom as well, with a bit of that shadowing, as you can see. So the maximum brightness tops out at close to 400 nits, which is not bad, and you can still see it in direct sunlight. Okay, so let's jump into ROM performance. Does the 120Hz refresh rate help? Is it the fastest UI experience with MIUI 11 from Xiaomi ever that I have seen? It is. I can thankfully say that I'm really not seeing much lag at all. There's a couple of little things that I will point out, but this is just so quick. Now, of course, I need to be recording this video at 120 frames per second and then publishing it at 120 frames per second. You watching it on 120 Hz monitor to see exactly how good this is. Now, there's this, of course, which is some pop-up thing that's just in the Chinese ROM, which is kind of annoying here, but have a look at the scrolling speed. It is very fluid. So this is the same kind of experience like the Asus Republic of Gamers 2 phone in terms of the UI fluidity, that it's really good. Now, one thing I have noticed here, that's with the camera settings, that this doesn't seem, did you see that then? I'm gonna say it, micro stutter, it just did it. A little bit of a lag then. And look at the settings. Menu in here, okay, it seems to be doing it now, but to me, it doesn't seem like it is at 120 Hz, 120 frames per second. It's not matching the refresh rate here. And there's a few things like this that you will see just then. Look at that animation. Not as fluid as it should be, but this happens to be probably one of the more fluid phones from Xiaomi that I have used. So let's go through some here of the tests that I like to typically run. So out of the box, because it's the Chinese ROM, you're going to get a lot of this bloatware, okay, and that's typical. You can uninstall it. I counted 28 applications of junk that I removed. So with the display, which we'll get onto just after this, is you can see we've got two options. So 120 Hz, better quality, or 60 to save on battery, of course. And you do have a dark mode. That's part of MIUI 11, which is good to see. Now you can also adjust the colors. I prefer standard here, which will make the screen look a little bit more neutral white. I found out of the box the IPS panel is a little bit bluish in tint. And you get 109 gigabytes, 110 gigabytes free on first use. This is the latest patch that came through to reduce system lag. So, hey, Xiaomi, they know about it. They know there is some lag present, and hopefully they can work on it a little bit more, as I pointed out. So internal storage, very quick. Well, not the fastest, of course. It's not UFS 2 dual channel, but apparently it's UFS 2.1 single channel spec. So pretty good, but have a look at those random reads and writes. They are very high, so it is quick storage, and it's not going to be the thing that is going to hold up our system right here. Now just on to a couple other things as well. Of course, Widevine level 1 cert, not there. It's level 3. As expected, this is the Chinese ROM. Hopefully that'll be in the global. And here's our Antutu version 8 score. So respectable score, not bad considering it is a mid-tier, mid-range. Okay, it's not a flagship. Now the speeds out of wireless, impressive. Very good for this chipset, for this kind of phone, and the price tag. Using here, you can see Wi-Fi sweet spots to get the actual link speed between my router and the phone. It maxed out at 670 megabits per second. That is blazing quick for this type of phone, beating a lot of flagships. Really impressive there. And even on the other side of the studio here, still got almost 200, which is really quite good. 4G speeds, but that all is dependent on your carrier. So a little on to the battery life too, which I'm currently running and monitoring. I will mention this in another video as well. So GSAM battery stats at the moment, I have lost almost 2 hours, and that was in 21%. Battery gone, sorry, for 2 hours, almost. So it's approximately, this is at 120 Hertz, you are losing around 10%, you could say, an hour. So it could be a 10-hour on-screen device here. But I'll be back with an update video on just exactly what you can expect from 60 and 120 Hertz. Okay, on to audio. Hopefully my neighbor that's drilling in the background has stopped. He's been doing that for weeks on end. I do apologize. So 3.5mm headphone jack, tested it. Sounds really good. This is typical Xiaomi. Loudspeakers down the bottom, so unfortunately no loudspeaker in the earpiece. Would have been nice, but I guess they had to cut costs somewhere. So here's a sample of what you can expect. And just to mention as well, the call quality, no problems, no complaints there. And also signal strength on 4G here, no problems. So just how well does it game? Can it deliver 120 frames per second? Well, it tends to be down to game support, of course. So this is Call of Duty. And what I've done is I have enabled the highest frame rate, which, believe it or not, is the very max. But when you check it, very max only seems to be 60 frames per second here, which is a little disappointing. So I can't see. It's really down to game support on what is going to be supported. Whoa, someone's shooting at me. Yeah, of course I died. I was trying to knife him. So sadly, Shadowgun Legends here is capped to 60 frames per second as well. And I have noticed some frame dips, but all in all, it is playable. So it's down now to developers, the game developers, just adding 90 frames per second or perhaps 120 frames per second support. But if you're worried about if this phone can game or not, to me, clearly testing these demanding games, it'll game just fine. It's just going to be whether or not in the future we will get 120 frames per second support out of the developers. Okay, so onto video here, so we can shoot in 4K. This is 30 frames per second. There's no 60 frames per second option, not with this chipset. We do have some very good electronic image stabilization, which is good to see because sometimes Xiaomi was skipping this. You'd have it enabled, but it didn't actually work. Now the audio bitrate is a little low, as you can see, so they could improve upon the audio, and I seem to rant on about this all the time, and hopefully one day Xiaomi will actually improve that. So let's have a look now at the front-facing camera, but overall pretty happy with this quality. It's very good 4K. Now with the front-facing camera here, we just get 1080p max, and it doesn't seem to have any electronic image stabilization here, which is a shame. You see it does shake around a little bit as I am walking along, so hopefully they can add this with a firmware update, but I'm not holding my breath. This seems to be something that Xiaomi always skips on their phones, well, most of their phones, is electronic image stabilization with the front-facing cameras. Now we don't have a big crop. I'm actually not holding this right out. If I extend my arm a little bit right here, so that's one positive there. But you really do need a gimbal for vlogs. You can shoot video with the ultra-wide, but you cannot swap over to them once you start recording. We'll have a look at the main sensor now. With the main sensor now, the image is a lot brighter, but there is some stutter when panning around. And just a bit of low light front-facing video as well. You can see the quality, of course, has degraded, but that is normal. Okay, I really was questioning the combination of going with a Snapdragon 730G and such a high refresh screen. And I kind of see what Xiaomi's aiming for here. They're trying to give us the absolute best spec they can for a good low price. And again, I think they've actually done it here. MIUI is the fastest I have ever seen it perform. But as I pointed out there, that I'm still seeing, and it's just like, I'm still seeing micro stutters sometimes with the animation. It's almost like Xiaomi said, oh, hang on, let's go with 120 Hertz, keep that high refresh rate, high frame rate, drive the UI at 120 frames per second, people won't see any of the stutters then. But unfortunately, it seems some areas it's not running at 120 frames per second, the UI. It's not matching the refresh rate. It's noticeable in the camera settings. Now, it's probably just a little bug, but they'll go and fix that later on, but it's there. When you scroll up and down in the settings and various other areas, you'll notice that, hang on, this feels choppy. It looks choppy. This is not 120 frames per second. But apart from that, I mean, we've got a very good camera quality that I'm seeing so far from the examples. Ultra wide's a little, yeah, when you look at the edges, it's only 8 megapixels. The lens they've gone with, it doesn't seem to be really high quality, so that's typical. You get a little bit of blurring and lack of detail on the edges. But daytime photos very detailed. Even that 2x digital zoom from the 64 megapixel new IMX 8.6 sensor comes out okay. It's a very good photo. And even in low light, it's not too bad. It's not the best I've seen. So wait for Gcam ports as well. That should be coming in the near future. As well as a patch there too. There's a guy next to our forums who does work on that, patching the audio quality, increase the bit rate, because it's only 96. It should be really 128 or ideally 256, improve the audio quality a little bit there. No electronic image stabilization on the front-facing camera as well is a little disappointing. But then let's look again at the positives. Super fast charging, 1 hour, just over 1 hour to fully charge it with the included 27 watt charger. And then we have a very good build. Now, it's not just me. I know a lot of people will probably be thinking the same. It does look a little bit Huawei-ish, doesn't it? The way the camera is on the rear. It's got a very Mate 30 look to it, especially with the corners, the edges, the bottom of it. So clearly they're all copying each other, the Chinese manufacturers, and I can see that it was inspired by Huawei, the Mate 30, I think, the design of this. So it's good to see we've got a 3.5mm headphone jack, micro SD card support, and overall the UI and the performance of the phone is very good. Now, if you're a gamer out there, I probably wouldn't suggest getting this. I would get something like the Asus Republic of Gamers phone or the Realme X2 Pro if you want really good gaming performance. Those are phones that are a little bit more expensive, but then you can actually have the frame rate matching the refresh rate, because a lot of games out there, even older titles that could probably run at 120 if they're very light, won't be because they're not supported. But it's good to see Call of Duty is supporting the very high frame rate setting there. However, the GPU is struggling at times to actually deliver. Most of the times it won't actually be 120 frames per second as far as I can tell there. So that's one area where I say for gamers out there who want the absolute best performance for Call of Duty, for PUBG, get another phone, I would say. Now, in terms of an upgrade over the K20, camera-wise, yeah, I think it is, okay? Maybe not so much with the screen, it all depends. I mean, I prefer AMOLED panels more than IPS. It's not a bad IPS panel. The refresh rate certainly is a plus. They're a great spec to have, and it just makes everything feel super, super smooth and fluid, which is one of the best things about it. Even though I have to mention again that micro stutter, a little stutter. I do see it. I do see tiny little lags now and then, especially in the camera settings menu. Scroll up and down in that menu. It must be a bug, but it only seems to be running at 60 frames per second or 30 frames per second. It's not matching the refresh rate, unfortunately. Is it battery saving? I don't think it is. I just think that one's a bit of a bug. Now, battery life as well. Okay, we're looking at, so far my estimates, now I've been doing a lot of demanding work. I've been recording video, gaming, benchmarking. I've lost about 9% in 1 hour is what it's turning out to be. So it's looking like a 9 to 10 hour phone, but I believe it'll be a little bit less because of 120 Hertz. Now I will do a comparison. Well, I will record my stats, battery stats of both 60 Hertz and the 120 Hertz that it offers us. And I'll get back to you with a follow-up video of this one. After all, I just keep pulling the files off. I need more time with the phone here, and I don't want to delay this review here because of it. So build quality excellent, 3.5mm headphone jack, output is typical Xiaomi, very, very good. So there's so much to like about this phone, especially when you factor in the spec we are getting. 64 megapixel new Sony IMX 686 sensor, 120 Hertz, large battery, 27 watt charging, which is only just over an hour will fully charge the phone, and for the price it's going to be selling for, once it comes out with a global version, it is really, really good. What they're offering for that price, you cannot deny, is a hell of a deal. It really is good. So I do like this phone. I didn't expect the outcome to be quite this good, but I think Xiaomi's done it again. They really have. I'm looking forward to seeing the Pro version of this, so the K30 Pro, will probably have a Snapdragon 855 Plus, perhaps because it'll be cheaper, or maybe they'll wait until February, March and release it with the 865. That'll be interesting to see. Thank you so much for watching this video. Do subscribe for more up and coming videos on the K30. Bye for now and see you in the next video.